SCH is an employee-owned company of engineers, architects, planners, and scientists. At SCH, we design sustainable places that bring communities together and provide solutions to keep people and goods moving safely and efficiently. We renew infrastructure that keeps our world operating and engineer solutions for a sustained environment. That's how we're building a better world for all of us. Learn more at schinc.com.
From the League of Minnesota Cities, this is City Speak. I'm Luke Fisher, Executive Director and host of this season of the show. This season, we are having honest and open conversations with city leaders discussing the journey to leadership and the moments that help define big career leaps, either new roles, new projects, or big moments. I'm joined today by one of the greats, Dianne Miller. She's the city administrator in Eagan. Welcome.
Thank you, Luke.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So you're the city administrator in Eagan, Minnesota. How big is Eagan? What is the population?
Eagan is a population of just over 68,000 people.
68,000. And how many people do you have on staff?
We have about 300 full-time staff when you include our fire department, and then another 400 to 500 seasonals, particularly in the summer months with a water park.
So that's a big operation and a big organization, and not one that you're new to. Tell us a little bit about your professional experiences, where you came from, and how you became the city administrator in Eagan.
Sure. I took a bit of a unique approach staying in one community.
Okay.
So started off graduate school at the University of Kansas, Rock Chalk.
There we go.
And then I went to the city of Eagan as an intern
Okay.
under Tom Hedges. I was his 39th intern, and I will
39?
Yes, I will forever be grateful for that opportunity.
Okay.
And I joke that it was a blessing to me, but probably a curse because I was the last intern at the
You
city
were?
of Eagan. Yes, I transitioned to a full-time role there, which meant that I think the money followed me, and I felt a little guilty about that I was the last Hedges intern. I interned for a year in Eagan, and then had the opportunity to stay on, and was hired as the assistant to the city administrator.
Okay.
Did that for about 10 years. In the meantime, getting married, having kids.
Yeah.
And then I filled Jamie Verbrugge, who went on to the city of Rosemount, is now the city manager in Bloomington. And then after 10 years as the assistant too, I served as the assistant city administrator for another 10. So that TO, those two letters can make a big difference for a while. But it was a great time to just learn, get my feet wet, get experience to lots of areas of the organization.
That's fantastic.
Transitioning to the assistant role allowed me to get more into the supervisory role, leading a department, also very valuable experience for 10 years, so just shy of 10 years. And then Dave Osberg was the administrator at the time, came over from Hastings, and I got to work with him for about 9 years, which was wonderful. And I knew several years in advance when he was looking to retire, which was really helpful from a preparation standpoint. And that's when I went after the city administrator role and was very fortunate to be offered the job, and it's been just shy of 2 years now in that role.
So you've spent essentially your entire career in one organization. What makes Eagan such a great place to work?
Yeah, I truly love it. I really honestly can say I wake up and I look forward to going to work. And I don't know that many people really say that. Now, do I have my days where I'm like, I'm dreading this meeting?
We all do.
Of course, we all do. But as a whole, I love the organization. And I think it starts with elected officials that are so trusting. You know, we have a very well-managed community in terms of our council who's experienced, they get along, they challenge each other in a good way, but ultimately they have an incredibly high level of trust in staff. And that trust really goes a long way because it gives us the ability to try new things, knowing that maybe we need to pivot here or there, but the council's got our back. I think that's allowed us to be really innovative, and it's given me freedom as the administrator to allow our team to try new things, and I love that.
So you mentioned you were an intern and then you became the assistant to the city administrator before you became the assistant city administrator. Can you talk a little bit about the assistant to the assistant, like how you thought about things? You know, you learned about supervision, you learned about how an organization works, all of these like sort of blocking and tackling of the profession. But what did you do to start to prepare yourself for that first transition?
As an assistant too, that's your chance to get to do those large-scale projects.
Sure.
Learn to be a project manager. You get relationships in the community and relationships amongst staff within other departments, so that was really important. And then when you become the assistant, at least in my time, it was learning how to supervise, right? I didn't have that experience. I had a mentor on staff who did a phased retirement approach and allowed me to work under him to learn how he managed people. We had very different styles, but I really appreciate what I learned from him. That succession planning was very much in place, and again, cultural within our organization. I'm really grateful for it.
So then you make the transition from assistant city administrator to city administrator, and you mentioned at the beginning that Dave gave you a little bit of a heads up. You had some time, you had some runway to think about it, and my guess is, maybe it was, but maybe it wasn't I absolutely am going to do this. You probably were thoughtful and really made the choice and were intentional about it in your career. Can you tell us a little bit about how you approached that? What'd you talk to Dave about? What'd you talk to others about as you were weighing out this opportunity that was coming?
Well, I remember even a couple years before he announced his retirement, it's when I started to find myself saying, if I were the administrator, I'd do this. Not that I was challenging Dave in any way, because he was absolutely wonderful, but you have your own ideas. I didn't have those thoughts 6-7 years ago when Dave was hired.
Sure.
That was one of the differences, is why I knew I was ready, as I started to more and more see myself in that role and my own unique talents that I could bring to it. Knowing Dave was leaving, I just wanted to be as curious as possible.
Sure.
So I'm known for asking a lot of questions, ask the staff I work with, but I asked to be involved in the areas that I didn't have as much expertise. So, I started going to maybe community development meetings where they were talking about development. I didn't have experience with TIF, and some of the tools that they use, and I wanted to learn more there. I made sure I was on a budget team to be more familiar with our financial systems. I even asked him, could I see some of the agendas for those one-on-one meetings you have with the mayor? Because then I could see what it was, what he thought were issues that needed to be brought up. So take advantage of those opportunities for those who are looking at making that leap. You've got this built-in resource. I wanted to make sure I used it.
You probably had to be a little bit uncomfortable or a little bit vulnerable in that if you're going to go to a community development meeting and that's not like your forte. And so how did you think about that? Did you talk with the department director and say, here's what I'm really trying to do? Or was it a little bit more implied or a little bit more subtle?
I was pretty transparent that I was looking for the city administrator role. I'm pretty direct that way. It wasn't a guarantee by any means, but I'm not going to go in and be dishonest and pretend I know all these avenues that I don't know. So I was just very honest in saying, I'm really interested in this role. I don't feel like I know enough right now. Can you help me get there? And I found the directors were always so willing to help educate and learn. And those couple years really made a big difference in, I think, in my confidence when I was ready to make that next move.
Oftentimes, the challenges with these jobs they are big jobs. They take a lot of time. They take a lot of energy. I know when I worked for a city, every time I saw a snowflake, I could feel like my blood pressure come up, like are the plows going to go out on time, all of these things. And that requires balance across your whole life. And I'm curious how you have approached balance in your career professionally, knowing too that your husband is a city administrator, right?
Right. Yeah, that's probably a topic for a whole conversation. But one of the reasons I waited until I was 42 to become an administrator is because that balance was important to me. And I give a caveat, like I'm not anti-feminist here in saying these statements, but my role, to me, what I valued was I wanted to give everything I could at the time to be an administrator. But I also really wanted to raise a family, and I knew we wanted a large family. We have 4 children. And those years as assistant 2 and assistant, I was very dedicated to my job. I love my job, but it is a different role. And those years allowed me to focus on those tough years with young kids. I felt like I was pregnant or nursing for like 12 straight years. I pretty much was, but that was really important to me. And I also had the grace of administrators, Tom Hedges in particular, who allowed me to work a flexible schedule before that was really a thing. And it bred incredible loyalty to the organization, to be able to get, I think I went to a 30-hour-a-week schedule for several years there when I had young kids. That brought me back. I always joke, like, they got 40 hours of work out of me. No doubt about it, but just knowing that I had that flexibility, I hope others will do that for people, because that is just a way to give that flexibility to, like I said, breed that loyalty, and it made me want to work even harder when I came back.
I'm someone who's got young kids at home. I've got a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, and finding balance has been something that's really important to me. And I'm curious if you've got like one piece of advice for me as I approach kind of, exactly what I'm walking into with my kids being their age to find the right balance with the type of job that I have.
When you walk in the house, stop looking at your phone. When I got this job, some people asked, it seemed like the council was really respectful of you, Dianne, and the boundaries. And I said, well, I had conversations with each of them.
Sure.
And I would advise people to do that. You have one chance to have that first check-in with new council members. And there was a mutual level of respect, and we talked about how we like to communicate with one another and boundaries for one another. And one of the boundaries I asked for, I said, can you not text or call me between 5 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. Because that is time that I value dinner with my family, homework time. I'm happy to talk to you before or after, but just give me that hour and a half. And they all said, of course. And to this day, I've never gotten a call between 5 and 6:30 p.m.
Really?
It's an easy way to set, just know that when I get home for a little bit, I can just spend time with my family.
I don't think I've ever heard somebody employ a strategy like that before, but that's fantastic. And it sounds like if you're willing to be upfront with someone about it and have the conversation in an easy way like that, it's probably sustainable.
In the same boat usually, right? They've lived a similar life. They get it.
Yeah.
It works.
All right, so it sounds like you really got started on the right foot with your council. As you've thought about that transition and what that looks like for you and your time in the organization, what are some things that you did to make sure that you've been able to be as successful as you are already?
Having the advance notice was a bit of a blessing and a curse in terms of knowing that job was coming. So the blessing side was I had a lot of time to prepare.
Yeah.
Being a bit of a perfectionist, ultra-competitive personality, I wanted that job. And so I was going to fight for that job, and I was going to study. Well, 2 years of that's a long time. So, I was like, I might have been a tad obsessed with the process and just that challenge of getting the job. Mm-hmm. And I still remember the night they offered it to me. I was like, yes, I got that job. And then 5 minutes went by, and I was like, oh my gosh. I got this job. Maybe I should actually start thinking about the job and not the process of getting it.
Sure.
So that was this aha moment for me. I was like, holy mackerel, I need to plan for this. And then I jumped in and started meeting with people and learning expectations and talking about what they needed from their administrator. And it went from there. It helped having personal relationships.
Sure.
But like everyone talks about that when you've been a peer for so long, I've been in the city for 20 years, so I knew a lot of these directors as my friends.
Yeah.
And that, you hear the proverbial, buddy to boss is tough. And it is tough. And for the most part, I'm so glad I have those personal relationships. I think it helps more than it hurts. But there are challenges with that you have to navigate and sometimes have to reset those boundaries and expectations of each other. And sometimes you miss your friend, the director. That's part of the change when you change roles in an organization.
Well, Dianne, I really appreciate you joining our conversation today and sharing a little bit about your experiences and what it means to grow in an organization. I know that I'm going to leave our conversation today with a few takeaways. One is at the early stages of your career in particular, but all the way through, the importance of getting uncomfortable, being a little bit vulnerable, and learning new things in the organization, and being upfront with the reason why you want to learn. Mm-hmm. It's important to know yourselves and pick the opportunities that give you the right sort of balance in your life, that you can have it all, that you can have a really successful career as you have, and a really wonderful family, which we know you have as well. And that it's important to be upfront with your boundaries and be direct with what you need in any type of leadership role, because you have a lot of pressure, and sometimes it's easier to just cut down to it, and you can make progress faster with folks in that regard. So thank you so much for being here. This conversation has been a lot of fun today.
Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for what you do at the League. We really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. That's it for our show today. I want to thank you for listening to City Speak. If you have an idea for an episode, feedback, or want to get in touch, you can connect with us at podcast@lmc.org. Until next time, be well.